I'm Brian Hiatt. This is Rolling Stone Music Now. Today we're bringing you a really fun and fascinating interview with country legend Keith Urban. We talk about everything from his love of Bruce Springsteen and Warren Zevon to the time he spent with Taylor Swift. She opened for him early on, to the deep emotional currents running through his new album, which is called High. Here's my conversation with Keith Urban. I love seeing the footage from this Buc-ee's pop-up show you just did. It looked like it was a ton of fun.
I had the best time. Yeah, I really did. It was great.
First of all, for the Northerners in our audience, explain perhaps what a Buc-ee's is, and then just how this came about and what this was like.
I don't know that anybody can explain what a Buc-ee's is. It's an experience. It's a religion in Texas, I would guess. They're just the biggest, most behemoth gas stations you've ever seen in your life. Somewhere between an airport and a Walmart that also has gas pumps, 70, 80 gas pumps outside. It's so over the top in all the best ways. And I went down there maybe a couple of months ago, and I was thinking, man, this would make the ultimate gig just because it's so quirky. And I just imagined sort of sitting up on a tiny little stage by the front door, either inside or outside, kind of, and then playing some music with a little three-piece band while people are coming and going, filling up their car, getting some brisket. That was my truthful vision of what this might be. And so we got a little PA system. We had really no production at all. Festoon lights and a few things like that. Luckily, my stage manager was like, we should probably get a couple of other lights. So we had like some lights on trees, some wind shop light, just like a tiny little club show. When I got there in the afternoon and I just saw this just mile of traffic backed up, I kind of shit myself because I knew we were grossly underprepared from a production standpoint. And I said to my bus driver, I said, man, to paraphrase the famous line from Jaws, we're going to need a bigger PA.
Did you get one, though?
No.
Oh.
We didn't get a bigger PA. We just said, I guess some people from my team were there, and I asked them after. I said, did you go towards the back of the crowd to hear what it was like? And they're like, yeah, you couldn't hear much, but everyone was having the time of their lives back there. So it was fun.
Setlist.fm lists, all your shows, and it's officially there, August 16th at Buc-ee's number 57.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted. I think I just wanted to have a poster made that said live at Buc-ee's because that made me laugh. Those words put together just sounded hilarious.
When you throw cover songs into a show, Sweet Home Alabama, The Joker, you do a little bit of Flowers by Miley Cyrus. You threw in a little bit of Anti-Hero by Taylor Swift not long ago. How do you select your covers?
They're always random. They start random. There's just something that pops into my head while we're in that moment, something that either suits the rhythm or we happen to be in that key, and that's the first thing that pops into my head. And then it's just... then it just usually stays in there. But they're always spontaneous at first.
Do you play to a click on stage? How much are you locked into a show?
Well, it depends what the show is, what we're doing. I mean, I'm never locked into a show. I'll answer that very clearly. I'm never locked into a show. Even when we have tracks, I have my track guy on stage so we can extend, we can shorten, we can cut it completely and go off on a tangent. I can do anything in real time. It's quite liberating.
That's kind of the best of both worlds when you have that potential supplementation, but also are able to go free, especially as a guitar player.
Yeah, and all of my crew know it. Like my lighting guy, my video guys, content guys, all those guys. They, at first they're like, "What the fuck," and then they go, "Oh, okay." At some point there might be, we just kill it and let the thing go. I always have this image of, how the gliders get taken up by a plane. I always think that's the image I have, and then you're being towed by a plane, which is like the tracks and the whole structure of the show, and then the thing unhooks, and then you're just gliding. You're in free fly mode.
I've really enjoyed listening to your new album, which is called High. It's really strong. I was talking to someone who said it was a return to form, and I was thinking that's a compliment, but as an artist, is that something you don't want to hear because it implies there was some form that you've slipped out of recently?
No, none of it. I mean, I'm happy with it. And what anybody makes of it, I've really learned over the years, it's none of my business what people make of it. Because, you know this when you write pieces. Someone's going to read your piece. And a lot of the times, the first thing they're going to do, if it's written by Brian, they're going to have a preconceived idea of what it should be, what you should be saying, what your opinion should be. So they're reading it for what it isn't. That's the first thing they're doing. They're not reading it for what it is. That may take longer. And I think, music is art is exactly the same, especially if you've been fortunate to make a lot of it, then you do create a preconceived expectation that is hard to break through and allow it to be what it is versus what it isn't. That just takes time.
What I hear on this album, and again, it's just a perception, is it feels very free. It feels like, not that you ever do, but not that it sounds very much like there's nothing you're trying to fit into, no particular goal in mind, just making the sort of best Keith Urban music that you can at this moment in 2024.
That's it. Yeah, and songs I love. I love a particular kind of feeling in songs, whether they're ballads, up tempos, loose, structured, deep, shallow. I don't give a shit. I like it all. And the records I've made that I've been the happiest with are the ones that just have that sort of free-flowing thing about them. One of the records I keep coming back to was the New Radicals record that came out in the 90s.
Sure.
I listened to it again recently because I was obsessed with it when it came out, and I was like, why did I love that record so much? The whole album. And I went back and listened to it again, and I went, I know why I love it. It's because Greg Alexander put together this flow where it was like a really well written, well built, well played, well structured song. Then the next one would be this like stream of conscious, just making shit up as he goes, loose as hell. And then a song or two later, back to structure, back to form, back to craft. And the whole record just ebbs and flows between sort of order and chaos in really a beautiful way. And I thought that's what I hope my records have ultimately been, is a bit of a mix of order and chaos in, relative to what I do. But when I started working with Dan Huff, our first struggle was the fact that I felt he was just so tight and he felt I was so loose.
I wonder if you could break down a little bit more, like loose how, tight how.
Super pro and super unpro, which was him and me. So he was coming at it with a real craft sensibility of how you professionally make a recording. And I'm coming at it like, I just want to get my spirit recorded. And those two worlds I've been trying to reconcile those two worlds ever since I moved to Nashville. How do I stay true to who I am, but also have commercial success? Can you do both? I mean, I love hooks and I love those kinds of things, but I also like a bit of loosey goose. And so I think meeting Dan was one of the best things for me, because over the years, I think I've influenced him to get a little bit more carefree in his recordings, and he's helped me know how to be a little more focused and craft when it needs to be applied. Yeah, that's it.
The ability to achieve perfection in the past 24 years has only just keeps increasing. The degree to which things can be manipulated and perfected and tweaked, and less than ever is there a need to play in real time. So how do you kind of grapple with that?
Well, first of all, there's no soul in perfection, so I certainly am not trying to go for that. I'm just going for authenticity. And authenticity is just what it is in that moment, like the authentic approach for me on a particular song may be, I want it to be as tight and as structured as Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes, or a Toy Matinee song where it's like, it's crafted to fucking just hit you with the craft and the precision and the articulation, blah, 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 blah. If that's what you're going for and you get it, then that was an authentic capturing of what I was going for. If I wanted to be loose and spirited, then I just want to capture that. And certain songs, the longer I've spent with them, the more I've found myself undoing things, deleting overdubs, just getting rid of crap because it just got too layered and it lost a bit of its spirit. Or I'll go and re-sing it again because we got too anal on the vocal, and it's like, yeah, every line sounds really good, but it doesn't feel good. So let's maybe scrap that shit and just take another swing at it a bit looser.
You close the album with this song, Break the Chain, which I think is definitely up there as far as one of the most personal and revealing songs you've ever done, I think.
It's never too late. It's never too late to break the chain.
I believe in part it's about your dad dealing with your upbringing. It's just the idea that you don't have to repeat that, which I think is a powerful idea for anyone. Tell me about writing that song and getting that sentiment out and what that song means to you.
Yeah, I have a complicated relationship with my dad. He's alcohol. He passed away in 2016, 2017. But he was alcoholic his whole life. And so I was raised in an alcoholic family. But he was a high-functioning alcoholic because he got up early every day and went to work and never bailed on that. You know, we always had somewhere to live. I mean, albeit we never owned a house. It was always rented, and we moved constantly. So we never had much in the way of, well, we didn't have any stuff. You know, we weren't a family that had any stuff. We were very, very working class. But, you know, it's got its own dysfunction, that environment. And I love my family, and it's been a delicate subject for me over the years because I never want to sound disrespectful to my family of origin. Yeah. I love my family of origin, but it was a naturally dysfunctional environment when you have an alcoholic in the house. It just is. And I, lo and behold, discover I'm alcoholically wired myself. It took me many, many, many years to see that and to not only do something about it, but to want to do something about it took a long time. I didn't want to do anything about it. You know, I didn't drink like my dad, so I didn't think I was alcoholic. But the basic wiring dynamic was there in me. And after 3 rehabs over 8 years, I finally went, oh shit, maybe I'm alcoholic, and got it together. But so I had no intention of writing this song. I didn't have the title. I thought I was at peace with my dad and his passing and his addiction and never getting sober, and love my dad, you know, and all good. And then I go and meet this guy, Mark Siblia. Troy Tomlinson recommended the two of us meet, and I walk into his studio, and he's got this Del Loro acoustic, which is a acoustic from the 30s. Wow. I'd never seen one before, and it's got a rubber bridge. And I'm like, what the hell is that thing, man? You know, pick it up, and it's got flat wound strings. It was just a sound I hadn't heard. And I immediately played what was the opening line of this, what would become this song. And as I'm playing it, this very smart collaborator, Mark Siblia, we haven't really said anything to each other except hi. and I'm playing this guitar, and while I'm playing it, about to say, gosh, this thing sounds good, he's already grabbed a mic, he's placing it in front of the guitar, he's hit record, he's capturing it. And to your point, we're writing the song without having said anything. And the music was speaking something, and the melody came, and then these words came, you know, too late, is it too late for me to listen, for me to change? And man, this fucking song just poured out of me lyrically. And I was sitting on the couch at one point, just with a legal pad, just got to the second verse about my dad. And, you know, I just didn't understand why he was so mad at the world, mad at me. I was just a kid, and I'm not going to do the same thing. Fuck, I just was bawling my eyes out. And Mark Siblia, again, not even knowing me at all, looks over at me on the couch, and he just goes, must be true. And then went back working on the track. And it was the perfect thing to say, because it just let me stay in it and finish the song. I sang the vocal, did some harmonies, and then we listened to it, and I said to Mark, man, we should just leave this song just like it is. I don't want to take it into a studio and get all pro players and let's bullshit on it. I think let's just leave it. It feels true, and let's just leave it. And we left it. That's the demo vocal. everything is what it is. And I added some sort of Jay Joyce inspired atmospheric guitar stuff at the end. And we added some drums to just have a bit of an emotional arc. And when we finished it, I went, I don't know what my album's going to be, but I know this will be the final song.
Yeah.
Because it's also hopeful. It's meant to be hopeful in so much as I know a lot of people that are struggling with all kinds of things. A lot of it is their dysfunction from their environment, how they were raised. And I was guilty of this too. I'm like, well, it's not my fault. My fucking dad, all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, at some point, it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility to change it, or just keep bitching and moaning and blaming everybody else. And I just went, yeah, right. It's not my fault I was born alcoholically, but it is my responsibility to either continue it or do something about it. And that ran across everything, every kind of behavioral dysfunction I had. Like, I'd like to try and change this if I can, but is it too late? I'm like, not really. Shit, I've seen people get sober at 80, So again, it's never too late to stop laying blame to the environment you were raised in and go, well, change it. Can you change it? Is it possible to change, And can I break the chain and do things differently? Or am I going to perpetuate this trauma into my family?
It's interesting because your sort of inheritance from your dad shaped your life and career in profound ways. And I'm talking about musically as well. It really seems like the whole music thing was almost bequeathed to his musical journey that took him from rock to folk to country was sort of bequeathed to you, and you took off where he left off in some ways.
That is spot on, Brian. Literally bullseye. People ask me early on, how come you're in Nashville? And I go, because I grew up in a house full of American country music. If my dad loved African music, I'd be living in Zimbabwe explaining what am I doing there. It'd be the exact same thing, and equally as difficult as it turns out. But I'm grateful, so grateful that he had such a passion and love for American country music and culture, American culture too, because I love living in the South. I love the color of it, the just all of it, the dimension of life and people that are here in the South is endlessly fascinating to me.
Hearing this story of writing that song with a collaborator you never met before reminds me of your tales of your first years in Nashville when you were doing just that as a songwriter, going and at that point, I think you found it almost the opposite, like just a very awkward and unnatural thing. I sort of wonder if all those years have taken you to this point in a way.
For sure. Yeah. All of it. I mean, working through how strange it is to meet somebody and pour your heart out immediately to a total stranger. It's very weird. It's a weird thing, but I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it's just becoming more comfortable in my skin and in my searching and my curiosity. I'm very comfortable in all of that. And if I find like-minded people who want to explore that as well, then it works. And if it's not, then it's not. But I'm very comfortable in my uncomfortable search. Yeah, that's what it is.
You said that you weirdly had sort of mixed feelings about whether you thought of yourself as a songwriter, and that's something you've really only been resolving recently.
Yeah, because to me, songwriters were obviously, the Bob Dylans and stuff like that, Hank Williams and the Merle Haggards and, writers, Dean Dillon, writers, actual, country song writers. I never saw myself as that because I was always an artist who loved writing, but it was always in that order. And so I never, obviously when I moved to Nashville, I'm swimming with freaking writers, like the real deal. Jesus, I mean, it's a whole different level of lyricism. And the only thing I found lacking for me was a lack of melodic interest for me. When I moved here, it seemed to be so obsessed with the lyric at the expense of a good melody. And I was trying to see if I could capture a bit of both, but I've always leaned into melody first because melody has always been the thing that grabs my ear, and then I discover what the person's saying. But the melody's always grabbed my ear first. I guess I saw myself as contributing that with certain lyricism, but my preference was to always work with a really brilliant lyricist. But certainly occasionally I've been able to articulate my feelings. In the case of Break the Chain, that's definitely all that's my feeling articulated in that song. But I do love working with great lyricists as well.
Have there been times when you have self-written songs that are just knocked out of the albums by just songs written by other people that you just are like, those are stronger, I'm pushing my own shit out for this one? Or how does that work?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I got no problem with that. I mean, I couldn't give a shit who wrote the song, me included. I do not care who wrote the song. And so much so that when we sent out all these songs and everybody was like, can you send out the list of people because we want to know which ones you wrote. And I said, just assume I wrote them all. Here's the record. Because that's what the listener assumes. The listener assumes, I thought Glenn Campbell wrote everything. And I didn't want to know immediately that he didn't write that song. I thought Frank Sinatra wrote everything. I thought Elvis wrote everything. Elvis probably thought he wrote everything. The Colonel definitely did. Anyway, but I have no problem with who wrote a song as far as what makes the record and what doesn't make the record. Just as I don't with guitar parts. If I'm working with, the only thing I'm going to always do is play a solo on my songs. But guitar parts with Dan Huff, I'm going to pass the guitar back and forward. And man, if he plays something that I think feels better, we're going with that. We're just going to go with that, So I'm in service of the song and everything I do.
I thought Love Is Hard was another powerful one.
Thank you. Yeah.
You can make a fool of me and leave me standing on the street with all the messes that I made. You can yell, you wish me well.
Jeez, man, that song, shit. I was pretty much almost finished with the record, and Shane McAnally texted me one day and he goes, I know you're probably finished, but I do have to send you this. It might be a Hail Mary, And I'm driving in my car listening to that thing, sleeping in the same room, and I don't even hear from you. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Would you even notice if I didn't come home this weekend? I'm just like, I did the classic thing. I pulled the car over to the side of the road. I sat there and swam in this story. And when that chorus hit, and it went from this plaintive ballad to this emo angst, I was covered in chills. And halfway through the chorus, I called him and I said, I'm so going to cut this song, Shane. I love this, every sliver of this song, every fiber of it. And another example of not needing to reinvent the wheel, I also loved Aaron Canada's recording. He did the track of it. Don Williams always talked about the music being the frame around the picture. He said, the song is the picture, the recording is the frame, and you don't want it to overpower or underpower the picture, but it's not the picture is the song. And I went, the frame around this picture is pretty spot on. I'm just going to see if I can sing it and leave it just as it is. And I tried to replace the acoustic guitar part and went, it doesn't need it. It's so good like it is. So that's Aaron Canada playing the guitar. It's the first recording I've ever done where I played not one instrument on the whole thing. I loved it just like it was. It was emotionally right, and I adore that song.
I think the one that really took me by surprise groove-wise is Laughing All the Way to the Drink.
I work hard to play hard, aimed at the American dream. Yes, the end of a week now.
Very unusual, fun groove, and then goes really wild at the end. I imagine that one's going to be super fun live.
I think so, yeah. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad that spirit came through. That I've got this drummer, Terrence F. Clark, who's from Memphis, really great drummer. And a lot of musicians reading this piece, if this makes it in, will relate to this. We're at sound check, and he'll start playing something and I start coming up with riffs and hooks and a song idea, like all the time. And so I called Mike Elizondo and I said, can I try and experiment with you? Can I bring in my drummer, Terrence? And can he and me on guitar and you on bass just jam like all day in your studio? And I said, but we're going to let Terrence lead. He's going to start a groove, whatever he wants to play, and we're going to just fall in. and see where we go. Just nothing pre-spoken of at all. And we ended up with about 9 pieces of music that were all done this way. And one of them was this track. And every time I came back to it, I went, man, this thing feels so freaking good. So I called this great songwriter, Ben Burgess, and I had him come in and I played him all the tracks. And we got to this one. And I said, I kind of like this one. What do you think of when you hear this music? And he goes, well, man, it's kind of like, I don't know, laughing all the way to the bank. And I went, what about laughing all the way to the drank? And then off we went, writing the song. But it started as this 3-piece band jamming, and you can hopefully still feel the spirit of that in the studio.
Yeah, I think you can. And you got to burn on guitar on that one as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. That whole bridge thing was something I concocted in the shower one day, just in my head. I'm like, if we're going to be absurd, let's just be absurd and make this thing over the top. And so even the beginning with the truck starting up and the angry neighbor yelling at me, the whole thing's meant to be just absurd to the nth degree.
You're one of those guitar players who can really play, but really, you've said you prefer to do it in the context of the song. It's not like you're this bull being, held back, and the moment you get a chance, you want to play for 10 minutes. But at the same time, you can play for 10 minutes. How do you kind of see that in your mind?
The song warrants it. That's all I'm saying. The song draws it out, or it doesn't draw it out. For me, a song like Daytona on the record has maybe the shortest solo on the whole record. But that was all it needed. That was it. That's all it needed. But dodging a Silverado.
She got the hell out of Dodge in a Silverado with half a mile heart like a desperado.
When we got to the end of that it reminded me of Stupid Boy and some of those songs that I've always loved, just doing and the band continues, which all those roads lead back to Knopfler every time. I mean, I adored those records, Tunnel of Love, where he just goes off at the end, and it's this opus of guitar outro. And I've done it. We did it with somebody like you, and with Stupid Boy, and I've loved doing it over the years, and I missed it, but it's got to be organic. So I was waiting for the right song. So to your point, I think the song still is the thing that will draw it out as feeling like this feels like the right place to do it, a long one or a short one, really.
I know you like people like outside of country, like Lindsey Buckingham and, as you said, Mark Knopfler. And you do a lot where you're not just flat picking, right? You kind of use the fingers on your right hand and do some fancy stuff there.
Yeah, again, that's Knopfler, the Knopfler influence of no pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so do you not use the pick at all, or?
I have a technique where I go back and forward. I flip it to these middle fingers where, I wish this camera was working. I'm not sure exactly how to do it. Anyway, I'm not conscious of it. It's because it's just that thing where, you develop it out of necessity. And then over the years, I've figured out how to flip it in between my thumb and forefinger and then into the other fingers so that my thumb and forefinger are free to be used as fingers. And I can go back and forward quite quickly.
Did you learn a lot of Knopfler solos note by note? Can you still play them?
Literally note for note.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally note for note. Yep. I agonized over that stuff. His melodic choice, how he strikes it with the flash, where he does it subtly, where he does it aggressively. Yeah, he's so fucking good. Unbelievable.
There was no tutorials on YouTube back then. Was that all just by ear?
Yeah, which, it's got its advantages, doesn't it? Because it helped me develop my style, because it was my bastardized interpretation of what I thought he was doing it and how he was doing it. And I'm sure if I met him, I still haven't met him, which pisses me off, but if I could sit down and play, I'd be like, I do it this way. Of course, now, of course, over the years, watched him play on YouTube and all the rest of it. So I've many times looked down and go, he did it that way. Huh. I was on the high E doing it, and he did it on the B string. That's interesting. That kind of thing.
But that's actually a good point, which is that the fact that people can now go on to YouTube and see exactly how it's supposed to be played might be robbing them of a chance to develop their own style.
It absolutely is.
I never
it absolutely
thought of
is,
that.
Brian. It is, because now you've just got musicians. People are marveling at this 6-year-old kid that can play this solo note for note. And I'm like, right, but can he or she create? something, and do they have a style? And that great line from Miles Davis, it takes years to play like yourself.
Yeah.
It's such a great line. It really is, because most of us start by, copying someone, and hopefully eventually we just develop our own style that blurs and blends and hides all of our, what do they say? The art of originality is knowing how to hide our sources.
John Mayer has this whole other gig, obviously, now with Dead and Company, where he really gets to just stretch out on guitar. Does the existence of is that ever something you'd want, something that lets you just like really play like that and some other outlet?
Yes. And I adore John and love that he did that. And I think it's right there in front of me. It's been an amazing thing for him to be part of that band. It's been great for them, but it's been really great for John musically. Such a smart move. The first time I saw that it really stood out was when Peter Frampton toured with Bowie.
Right.
On the Glass Spiders tour. I remember thinking, that's so cool. He didn't have to do any of the press, no meet and greets. He didn't have nothing. He just stands up there and plays guitar all night. That would be fun as hell, I've definitely harbored a desire to want to do that at some point in my life. Just go out and tour as a guitar player in somebody's band. I would love it. Yeah.
It's sort of easier said than done, I guess, though.
It's when.
Yeah,
right? When. But I know it would improve my playing exponentially if I didn't have to run around. If I just got to stand in one place, I would play a lot better, for sure.
If you could fulfill that role with any artist, living or dead, who would it be? Or you could choose a few.
That's a great question, isn't it? I don't know. My brain's frozen right now because I'm sure there's people I can't even think of right now. I remember I saw Pink live one time and her guitar player. I was like, I'd do that. I'd go tour with her, as her guitar player. There's a lot of them.
What did you learn from working with Pink? You guys had a huge hit together.
I spent all my money drinking on my own, in this bar just sat here.
Yeah, because it was COVID, we didn't get to be in the same space at the same time. So sadly, it was that, separate recording. But I don't know about learning, but being reminded, her and John Mayer, I learned a lot from, of just making it your own, just no matter what it is, just make it your own. Pink made that song her own. I sent her the demo, and there was another girl singing the demo, which I thought was fantastic. And obviously Pink listened to it and went, yeah, that's good. Now I'm going to do it this way, and she made it Pink. And it was superb. She's such an artist. She's an artist is what she is.
And speaking of other artists' career paths, Taylor Swift opened for you way back in the day. I think it was on the Escape the World tour. So as a very young Taylor, she was a full-on country artist. She achieved escape velocity. There were times, I think, when people were wondering if you were looking for that escape and maybe you wanted to jump genres or find a total freedom from country. I don't know how true that is or not.
No, I never felt that. I only ever felt the desire to not have preconceived limitations on someone listening to my music as a particular genre that would carry a particular perception based on that person. When I moved to Nashville, and I'd travel around and people say, what kind of music you play? And I'd say, public people, just you touring around and you're playing in bars. And they'd be like, what kind of music you play? Well, I play country. And they go, I don't like country. And I'm like, well, you didn't ask the follow-up question. And they go, what's the follow-up question? I go, the follow-up question is, what kind of country? I say, you've already written me off because you've got one idea of what this genre is. And I've only ever asked that you dismantle that one perception thing you've got. So I was only ever trying to not be saddled with this one perception of what the genre was in a lot of people's minds, particularly when I would tour internationally. You'd go to Australia and they go, he's a country and Western artist. And I'm like, we'd show up at some little gigs when I was in my band and there'd be hay bales everywhere. And they would over the top country and Western themed, and I'm like, no, I'm not that, And so I was only ever trying to just make my music that I made, and it was a form of country, but it always involved other things. But So did Glenn Campbell's music that I grew up on.
Yeah.
That they weren't traditional country songs either.
And, famously, one of the key models for what you thought you could do with your career was John Mellencamp, who never was a country artist per se.
No. No. And God bless him, man, because that was a Epiphany concert that I saw on that Lonesome Jubilee tour, and really cleared the way for me where I was struggling with what to do musically, and seeing him in concert with this rock rhythm section, but also fiddle, accordion, acoustic guitar, but also balls to the wall, electric, drums, bass. It was everything. It was just everything. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Just take all the things that you love and make your own music. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. Just make your own music. People will call it what they want to call it, but take all your influences and make your soup.
There's soup. I like that. There's an interesting thing going on right now. A great, in my opinion, at least a Beyonce album that's at least in part country. What did you make of that?
Yes. It's an interesting time in country. We've seen it before. I think my first thought is we probably haven't seen it to this degree since maybe the urban cowboy period in the 80s. You saw it a little bit with the explosion of Shania, but that was more so country trying to have a pop appeal. It didn't pull pop artists into the country sphere. It just Popeyes country artists. And so it was a bit of a free fall for a minute. But country's always had this ability to contract and expand. And that's why it's such a long-lasting, resilient genre, because it contracts and expands like a lung. It goes in and out, in and out, in and out. It goes outwards to explore how to stay vital, relevant, and interesting. And then as soon as it starts to lose its way, it contracts back in and gets back to its center before it's lost its way. And then when it's gone back to its center and it gets a bit stale and linear, some artist comes along and expands it, and away we go again. And it's been doing it since the late 50s. So it's kind of beautiful that it's, I'm chopping my hand across my arm and saying, same as it ever was, same as it ever was. Just a new version of it. But it's interesting to watch this flip where now, everyone's rushing to the country genre to go, hey, will you do a collab with me? Will you do a collab with me? Instead of the other way around. But I tell you, the album I'm really looking forward to is Lana Del Rey's.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I think is, what I don't respond to is anybody coming in sort of saying, hey, I'm country, and then sort of doing an album to prove it. And I'm like, right, yeah. And what now? Okay, what's this for? Because if it's a thing that I feel like I've heard from the 90s, then I heard it. It hasn't pushed the genre forward in any way. I think Lana's album is of most interest to me because she's one of the rare artists that I think will so beautifully bring in elements to make this fresh Lana Del Rey record, bringing in some of these elements without it being a formulaic record in any way. She's not going to do that. She's such an artist, and I think that record I'm very excited to hear. Her cover of Take Me On Country Roads was absolutely loved.
Country roads, take me home to the place.
And then when I heard Tough, like, here we go. Here's another thing. But pulling in Western themes and a bit of imagery and a bit of this, bit of that. It doesn't have to be the blatant country stuff to make a country album. You can be a bit more creative with it. And I think Lana's the first one who I feel is showing a lot of creativity. I thought Beyonce showed an enormous amount of creativity with bringing things into her genre and her style and her sound really, really, really well. And I think Lana's going to do that even further. So I'm really looking forward to that record.
The other one is Post Malone, and some of these people are have more overt country signifiers in their music than you do. Sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and look, and Post is insanely talented. He is unbelievably talented. And here's what I hope, and I'll say this: I hope he stays here and makes another record, because I have a feeling that he's very, very capable of making a different kind of record. to this one that fits in this genre really well. But he made the one he's got to make first to get in. He did exactly what you got to do, and that is okay. Good, did that. I'm looking forward to the next one, and the one after that, because that guy is super, super talented. I'm a massive fan of his and always have been.
It's interesting, one thing that, one of the first things that people do when they enter this world is they put on the cowboy hat. And
Right.
you yourself, you joked about it. There's like a couple pictures of you wearing one, but you tweeted it out, but it's not something that you do.
Yeah, and I have to remind people, Johnny Cash didn't wear one. George Jones didn't wear one. Charlie Pride didn't wear one. Merle Haggard didn't wear one. Glenn Campbell didn't wear one. I'll keep going down the list. Ben Skill didn't wear one. When you start putting these all together and you particularly include George Jones and Johnny Cash, people go, oh, got it. Okay, you don't need the hat. It's not mandatory.
Were there moments when you tried one on in the mirror and you're just like, I'm not feeling this?
Yep. Yeah. When I moved to Nashville, and it was just like I was going down like a pork chop in a synagogue. It was just a disaster. And I'm like, all right, I guess I got to try and assimilate here somehow. And I did. I tried a couple of hats quietly at home in my bedroom. I'm just like this. I'm not that guy. I'm just not. I got to be who I am.
What keeps you hungry at this point in your career? What's unachieved that you want to achieve?
To keep discovering music that's in me that I don't know of yet. And I believe as the sun rises, I believe I've got so much more music inside me that I haven't tapped into yet, which is also why I love collaborating, because collaborating excavates some of that stuff that I couldn't have excavated on my own. And some of it's reactionary to the person I'm with. Something comes up out of the well that I'm like, Jesus, wow, I didn't know that was down in there. This is exciting. So that's why I'm passionate about collaborating. Why I just bought this studio downtown in Nashville, and why I'm digging in on the recorded future, because I'm passionate about making music.
Taylor Swift said a couple years ago, she for your Rolling Stone Australia cover story, I think, she had a long statement about how influential your music was on her, and in reminding her about all the things that could be incorporated into country. She specifically mentioned melodies, I think, which is what you were talking about earlier. What do you make of her development, and what have you taken away from? I mean, it's a fascinating thing to this young artist who opened for you. To watch her become what she's become, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, what she is now, she was that when she was opening for me. I could see it. Her vision was way off into the future. She was playing to that stadium the night she was playing in that arena opening for us. I could tell. I watched her on stage. I'm like, oh my God, this is a whole different thing. Like, I've had a lot of people open for me, and they've gone out the front and watched and taken notes and done all these things. Taylor did all of that, but she also, when she was on stage, you could tell this is not like anybody else. She's wired so differently, and she sees the future. She sees where she's going to be crystal clear. And I think that's the kind of thing that helped her navigate through so many waters that would have killed any other artist. So much negativity, so much hatred from people, so much just straight up shit that she got flung in all directions from people. But she clearly had her sights on the future and her abilities. And I think what I love about Taylor is she was always willing to confront her inabilities and work on them. She worked on being a better singer. She worked on being a better performer. She worked on all of it. She was always a great writer. And that side of her just got better and better and better. And to me, she will be one of the greatest writers historically, musically speaking. She'll be up there with the best of them. She's a phenomenal writer, in my opinion, because she can do lyric and melody. It's so rare. It's rarefied air. I mean, she collabs a lot, of course, but she's also banged out a few things 100% on her own that are absolutely superb.
You obviously got to be part of the Taylor's Versions project. And it is, I've talked to artists, the amount of sort of stick-to-itiveness that requires, the amount of hard work to re-record one's entire catalog. Most artists I talk to say they just can't even get their heads around the idea of having to do that. It makes them kind of nauseous to think about it.
Don't ever underestimate Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
That's a fool's game right there.
But you would not want to do that, I would assume, if you unless you really had to.
I'm lucky because I didn't find myself in the same position she did. I owned all my stuff. So I can't say I applaud her ingenuity and her willingness to follow through on that.
Obviously, there was Springsteen on Broadway, and Eric Church did a residency where he did some very stripped-down solo stuff. Would a solo acoustic show be something that you'd ever want to pursue in some form?
If I could make it interesting, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bruce is still one of my handful of Northern Stars. You know, my Northern Stars for me are definitely Springsteen, Elton John, Dolly Parton. Those artists that have constantly stayed interesting. And I think that's the key for me, because being relevant is one thing that at some point you're just really not capable of being in any sort of current sphere, because you've sort of moved past it. But you can remain interesting and creative. You know, what Elton created with that collab with Dua Lipa by using his... That's so smart what Elton did, man, right?
It's a human sign when things go wrong.
He's looking at the whole thing going, how do I get on top 40 radio? I'm 70. How do I get on top 40 radio? And he goes, how do I compete with 30-somethings? And he goes, oh, I'll just get my 30-something-year-old vocal, and I'll put my 30-something-year-old voice with a 30-something-year-old, and I'll come up with something new, and I'll get on radio. And he did it. That's the kind of creativity that fires me up, because Mick Jagger is another one where you just go, I don't care what you think I should be doing at this point. I'm gonna break that perception completely. Bruce did it beautifully with that performance on Broadway. Did you see that at all?
I did. Yeah, I saw it early on.
What was your reaction to it?
I thought it was amazing. I think it was even. I saw like the first week, which was very fortunate, but I think it got even stronger based on the Netflix thing, which was shot towards the end. I think it really developed. But I thought it was stunning. It was really interesting to watch how he handled the spoken stuff, you know, because that was the new element. There was a lot of monologue. So it was a whole different art form. So it's not easy to pull that off.
We went to see that, and I didn't know what to expect, you know, and I'm just sitting watching. And when he started talking, he'd had that piece about his father, you know, in the dream, talking there and saying to his father, that's you up there. You know, I'm following through on everything. I just sat there holding back tears so badly, so intensely. When the play finished, when he finished the performance and we'd been invited to go back and say hi, I said to Nick, I can't go back there. We got to go. We went outside, sat in the car, and I bawled like a baby. I just was, whatever happened, man, he hit some nerve in me that I couldn't go backstage. And about a week later, I sent a text to him saying, just kind of outlining as best as I could how it affected me and why I couldn't go backstage. And he was he couldn't have been kinder in his reply and the fact that he understood it, you know. But that was a really powerful thing.
Yeah, because it's the same thing for you, isn't it?
It's heavy. It's just heavy. And a band, because you're brothers, but you got to part ways, and you've got life on life's terms, and an alcoholic this. And it was, no, man, I'll start crying right now. Oh, yeah. It's so very close to the bone.
Yeah,
close to Bruce. But Bruce is a master of close to the bone. It's where he lives.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your top couple of songs by him?
Holy shit. God, I got to say, even something like Streets of Philadelphia, there's nothing in that, but he captures an emotion.
Gonna leave me wasting away in the streets of Philadelphia.
Nebraska, top to bottom.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that for a long, long, long time. That I had to grow into that. I had to be mature enough to get it. But I get it now. he's just one of those artists. I mean, even some of the really slick stuff he did later on, like Human Touch.
I just want something to hold on to, and a little of that human touch.
He just has a way of being commercial and sexy and vulnerable and whimsical and raw and poetic, all in one song. There's nobody does it like that. It's unbelievable. But he stays interesting. That's the whole point of this story, is staying interesting, doing interesting things. That's
Absolutely.
it.
And before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about Warren Zevon as well, because I know you said you've been listening to him. What's your favorite stuff by him?
First of all, I'm going to say that I discovered more of him through covers like Carmelita that Linda Ronstadt did, or, Purple Pitiful Me that she did. And by the time I then discovered Warren, I'm kind of hearing a guy doing Linda Ronstadt covers, which is disgusting to say, right? But again, I had to grow into Warren. And when I grew into him, I'm like, oh my God, this crazy guy. And I'm very good friends with Waddy Wachtel, so I've gotten some great inside stories about Warren. But he's one of those writers too that's just, songs like Rollin' the Headless Thompson Gunner and some of the lines he will say, Excitable Boy, I mean.
Well, he went down to dinner in his Sunday best. Excitable boy, they all said.
Adrian built a cage with her bones. What the fuck are you saying? What is going on? And in an upbeat, happy song, it's like, it's the best of bluegrass. It's some murder ballad that everyone's joyously singing. Warren was so great at that dark, sinister stuff. But those records are so good because there's nothing on them.
Right.
To your point about being able to achieve perfection through infinite tracks, and those records have very minimal on them, and they hold up because of the authenticity of them and the truth of them.
And that's our show. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, subscribe to Rolling Stone Music Now wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us 5 stars and a nice review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, because that's always appreciated. But as always, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.